Hi everyone, my name's Dr. Matt Williams. I'm a tutor in politics and what is known as the Access Fellow here at Jesus College at the University of Oxford. Now, what is an intellectual and what is intelligence, and why would anyone want either of those things? Well, first of all, an intellectual, that kind of sounds like an honorific title. It sounds like it's sort of socially recognized, as if someone has some skills or has said the right things or has been to the right sorts of universities. It's therefore a sort of slightly problematic concept because it suggests that to be an intellectual, you have to be recognized as such, and it's maybe dissociated from your actual capabilities or your actual skills. Someone who pointed this out pretty clearly was one of my intellectual heroes, Socrates, through the writings of Plato. He poked holes in the supposed clever people and intellectuals of Athens at the time of his life, to such an extent that he was killed for it. He was considered such a nuisance, he was corrupting the youth, that he kept telling people how they weren't as smart as they thought they were, and this was a big problem for them, so they decided that he couldn't stick around too long. And I think the concept of an intellectual, the use of the noun there, an intellectual, suggests that in order to be smart, you have to be recognized by other people. And that involves a lot of power, a lot of politics. I mean, fairly obviously, people can be intelligent without doing the right things necessarily. So let's move away from the noun intellectual to the adjective intelligent and sort of figure out what that possibly means. It's often a good idea to start at the root, etymology, so the origins of words, and the word intelligent comes from a Latin word intelligere. I'm almost certainly mispronouncing that because I've not had the right education necessarily. Anyway, intelligere means something along the lines of to understand or to comprehend. So intelligence is the capacity to get stuff, to figure it out, to understand it, to comprehend it, however you want to slice that. The issue, of course, is that has so many different facets to it. I mean, Howard Gardner famously came up with multiple factors of intelligence. We use an intelligence quotient test, the IQ test, but that measures an extremely narrow range of particular skills of understanding. And in the present world, we talk increasingly of things like emotional intelligence, of rounding out a range of different cognitive skills. So we tend to see intelligence as much more complex, rich and textured, and with people capable of multiple different things. And so intelligence, interestingly, is what's known as a heterology. And now, a heterology is a word that doesn't describe itself. Okay? In other words, we don't have much intelligence on intelligence. Ironically, the discussion of what it means to understand things is something we don't understand. We don't, for example, fully understand the role of genetics in intelligence. It's assumed that there must be a role for genetics, but it's also theorized, and with lots of backing in scientific research, that it's not down to fate. It's not like you're born with a fixed amount of intelligence, and that things like self-efficacy and effort have a huge impact in your capacity to obtain cognitive skills. And neurogenesis, where you grow brain cells, it's 100% a thing. So if you wanted to develop skills, just like if you wanted to learn a musical instrument or learn a new sport or learn how to dance, you could put some effort into it and you could acquire those skills. It's the same with any other cognitive ability as far as we're aware. And this idea that you have this sort of very rigid ceiling above your head that sort of limits your intelligence, and that's down to genetics, doesn't seem to bear out in the science. So that's good news. We can all aspire to being more intelligent. But then that, of course, begs the question, well, why? Why would you want to be more intelligent? Does it make for a happier, more contented life? It's not particularly strong evidence for that necessarily, and it's not clear why you would be doing it. Now, one of the things that people historically have sought intelligence for is power, that knowledge is power, and that if you have greater cognitive skills, then you can earn more money and you can be more influential. And that's unquestionably a tight correlation that's going on there. And so a lot of people that aspire to study at universities like this, like Oxford University, are doing so because they either, secretly to themselves or quite consciously want more power, want more influence, want more money. I think if we sort of strip it away, the most fundamental thing that you acquire from intelligence is problem-solving abilities. So whether those are problems in the world that need to be fixed, whether those are problems in your personal life, if you can understand the nature of the problem and you can figure out creative solutions to that problem, then that's what gives you the influence, that's what gives you the money, that's what gives you the sort of the rarefied influence in the labor market, right? So intelligence is just ultimately a problem-solving skill, right? And that is something that we perhaps all would aspire to, because there's lots of problems and we like to be able to fix it and we like to be helpful to other people. And that is certainly my route into wanting to be more intelligent. I find it fun as well. I find just learning about the universe to be quite enjoyable, but I also like to try and fix stuff, and that's why I do it. And I'm sure that lots of people would think a similar way. But I think sort of the thing to end on is that perhaps some of the most intelligent people I've ever encountered in my life have been very intellectually humble, in the sense that they don't sort of wear their intelligence on their sleeve. They don't brag about it. They don't show off how clever they are and how much stuff they've read and how much they know. They're actually much more likely to acknowledge the limits of what they know. And this goes all the way back to Socrates, who I was mentioning at the start. One of the most famous things he purported to have said is something along the lines of, the only thing I know for certain is I don't know anything at all. And one of the things that got him into so much trouble in Athens is that he kept sort of pointing out that the people who thought how they were terribly clever actually couldn't justify a lot of what they said. They didn't really know what they were talking about. They sounded clever, but there was not much logic, not much thinking underneath it. He was what we might call an intellectual skeptic, that he sort of suggested there's limits to what we can understand. And hence, when we use a word like intelligent and we go back to its Latin roots and we say, well, that's to do with comprehension and understanding the world, actually one of the greatest ironies of intelligence is that the most intelligent thing you can do is acknowledge what you don't know. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Thanks everyone, bye.